we probably do use the word narcissism a little too much in society. It has become a blanket term for anything that is selfish. And really, people tend to use it maybe a little too liberally when there's something uncomfortable that's happened in a relationship, whether it's with family members, friends, a boss, a loved one, a romantic partner, etc. It kind of gets labeled as that person was a narcissist, so that's why I'm not there anymore. And probably a little too willy-nilly, to be honest. However, what I would say about that is we can use it in two different ways. We can talk about it as a psychological diagnosis, which I'm not going to diagnose anyone. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing anyone. But I may use it as a character trait to characterize someone that the client who's sitting with me or a friend who's sitting with me potentially is using to identify a relationship that they either are in or were in to help them better understand what they are doing for healing and what got them to where they are today, so they can address those parts that hurt them, the parts that they're in pain from, and also potentially some things about themselves, or maybe they're a little codependent, etc., where they are karmically or energetically falling into these dynamics for healing. Okay, so I use that word with clients, or they'll use it with me, because it helps us identify the problem. So for instance, you can't heal a broken arm if you're calling it a bladder infection, right? Like there's a completely different list of things to do to heal a broken arm versus a bladder infection. So you need a proper, or a useful at least, diagnosis of something to address the pain and trauma. And if you're working with a life coach or a spiritual counsel person, as opposed to a psychologist or a therapist, it might be helpful to do this. I think it'd probably also be helpful in therapy to have a label for what the problem is, what the damage was caused by. So if the person was selfish with you, or manipulative, or demeaning, any of those things, that's going to lead to low self-esteem, low motivation, lack of identity, lack of self-worth, feeling unloved, feeling abandoned, etc., etc., etc. It's going to be really helpful to have kind of an umbrella or a label to say, this is why that person acted this way. We don't need to dig into it more than that, because that's their business, not ours. But from that standpoint, now let's address what we can do to support you in healing and growing, so we don't repeat the cycle. So we don't go out and like marry another one. So we don't raise little ones, right? Like if you have a parent that's like that and you're coming to someone like me, kind of fair to say, hopefully you're not actually engaging that behavior yourself, but you also want to make sure that you're not raising someone to be like that, right? So this is how it's helpful to use that terminology in life coaching and intuitive work and spiritual counsel, etc., outside of seeing your therapist or psychologist, because that's a completely different field. But I also, if I'd like to know in the comment section, I'm going to be doing either a newsletter and or a video about this, but I channeled some information probably a month or two ago, or maybe longer now at this point. I had to check my journal. Anyways, I channeled some information about why we're seeing a rise in this issue, why we're seeing more people being labeled that way, why we're seeing people talk about it more, why it's coming to a head and a pivot right now, why we're addressing it in society. It's a framework that we're working through and calling out. And yeah, I'm going to get my journal out, and I want to share that with all of you. And I'd like to know your questions and thoughts as I prepare to do that, so I can make sure to address them all in the newsletter and also in the video. But it's fascinating to have that for Spirit to share with me why we're seeing that and dealing with that. It's kind of incredible, and it's inspiring also. So it helps me from that perspective, for it to be inspiring, like this is why it's here and this is how we're growing and changing. So it takes it from being a problem to something that we are growing with and through. I hope this helps. Have a great night.